I've officially transferred the ownership of our house to my parents, and we're contemplating divorce. James, with a cold demeanor, pointed at me and callously insisted that I leave the house. He unleashed a stream of insults, supported by his parents' cheerful smiles, who seemed to silently endorse his actions. Nevertheless, I remained unfazed by their words, calmly accepting the decision to leave. Inside me, a well-thought-out plan accompanied the luggage I had prepared in advance. Hand in hand, I departed from the house without hesitation. They were oblivious to the gravity of the situation awaiting them. My name is Sally, just turned 50. Many years have passed since our marriage. Our children are now independent, leading lives away from us. I used to live the life of an ordinary salaried worker, but now, thanks to a friend's introduction, I spend my days as a teacher of handmade accessories, a hobby turned profession. This new job has become a turning point in my life, bringing fulfillment through interactions with my students and the joy of crafting every day. Some might have negative opinions about turning a hobby into a livelihood, but I am content. James and I met by chance at the company where I used to work. He was employed at a client company at the time, and as we started to meet often through work-related social gatherings, our relationship deepened. Eventually, we chose to marry out of love. After 3 years of marriage, our family was blessed with a healthy and energetic boy. He graduated from a well-known university and is now happily married, living a prosperous life. However, despite our son's success, the relationship between James and me became increasingly difficult to find joy in. Over the years, James underwent a transformation, displaying changes in behavior. The once gentle and considerate James became demanding, treating me like nothing more than a housemaid. His daily changing demands and preferences became a source of trouble for me. Lately, James has been easily angered, blaming me for trivial things, and instances of verbal abuse have been on the rise. I've been wanting to escape this life and start anew, but I'm tied down by an unpaid mortgage. Despite this, James quit his job without a clear reason and now spends his days lazing around the house. He hardly lifts a finger to help with daily chores, leaving me to manage everything on my own. The house we live in was recently rebuilt, and I funded it all. Managing the finances, I saved bit by bit for its reconstruction. It embodies my wishes and aspirations, a house I worked hard to build. I don't want it to fall into James's hands if I leave. Beyond the mortgage issue, this house symbolizes my dreams, with features like the spacious kitchen area reflecting my careful choices. Despite initial input from James on the house's design, I covered all the costs and wanted my wishes to be respected. Despite facing challenges, the house, with all its desired features, eventually became a reality, fulfilling our dream. I experienced a profound sense of joy about the reality of our new home. However, the cost of construction significantly surpassed our initial estimates, compelling us to take on a much larger loan than anticipated. Accepting such a substantial loan in our 50s was unexpected, but the prospect of the happiness our new home promised provided us with the energy to overcome this financial burden. On the flip side, James appeared somewhat sulky, as his opinions and wishes were not well reflected in the house design. He expressed discontent, considering it unnecessary and akin to throwing money down the drain. Ignoring his complaints and grumbles, I pressed on. Gradually, he stopped talking to me and began resorting to childish behaviors, such as scattering trash and leaving things disorganized to provoke irritation. I wondered when this situation, this life, would come to an end, pondering these thoughts every day. A few months had passed since we moved into the new house when suddenly the doorbell rang. We weren't expecting any visitors that day, leaving me curious about who it might be. As I prepared to go to the front door, James, surprisingly, got up and headed there before me, possibly aware of the visitor's identity. After a while, cheerful voices and laughter emanated from the entrance. When the door to the living room slowly opened, revealing the visitors, I saw the faces of my unexpected in-laws, Harold and Alice. Honestly, I always felt pressure in my relationship with them. When we first announced our marriage, they treated me coldly, criticized me for my lower social status, and maintained an awkward attitude even on our wedding day. Their interference continued post-marriage, and each time I interacted with them, I wondered how to handle the situation. Despite thinking there had been some change or settling down due to lack of contact, their sudden visit surprised me. Greeting them politely, I felt a slight tension, but they passed by me without a word, intentionally ignoring my presence and bumping into my shoulder. They marveled at the house, expressing envy at the spacious and user-friendly kitchen. James proudly showcased the house to his in-laws, and upon their return, the expressions on their faces seemed satisfied. However, James' expression turned stern, and he suddenly raised his voice in anger towards me, instructing me to hurry up and prepare tea and snacks. Overwhelmed by his words, I hastily prepared tea and served snacks, but his parents seemed dissatisfied, commenting on the hospitality. Despite my efforts, Harold expressed dissatisfaction, and as they quickly finished the snacks and tea, he commented appreciatively on the house's interior. James, with a broad smile, invited his parents to live together in the house, almost ignoring my presence. They listened to James's words and left, leaving me watching their retreating figures. I felt a significant gap between James and me, witnessing him chatting and laughing joyfully with his parents, something I hadn't seen in a long time. Subsequently, in response to James' invitation, his parents began visiting our house more frequently. Initially, it was a few times a month, but it gradually increased to several times a week, eventually becoming almost daily. However, their criticisms towards me never ceased, and James showed no signs of curbing them. James' attitude of blaming me, coupled with his parents' intensified disapproval, became more pronounced. His complaints about me not listening and causing our son suffering were relentless. Despite facing daily difficulties, I found myself unable to voice the frustration in my heart. All I could do was offer words of apology. The in-laws' visits increased beyond anticipation, and they started visiting even more frequently during my absence. They would come along with James, leaving clear evidence of their activities at home: scattered beer cans, empty bottles, and traces of spilled alcohol that seeped into our new rug. Despite my protests, the new house began to smell of alcohol and felt dirty. I couldn't understand why, despite not contributing to the household, James was quick to complain. His involvement in gambling added another layer of worry, as remnants of used betting slips surfaced regularly. Explaining the risks of gambling and its impact on our finances seemed futile. The losses were a significant blow, especially since the money used for gambling was hard-earned through my tireless work. Nearly a month into the frequent visits from the in-laws, they targeted the times when I was out. One day, returning home early, I found them leisurely spending time in our house. Surprised, I confronted them, but their snarky words and indifferent attitude made it clear that they considered my presence bothersome. Frustrated and stressed by the insolent attitudes of James and his parents, I realized I had reached my limit. Instead of succumbing to emotions, I decided it was time to devise a plan to address the situation. Amidst this turmoil, an unusual event occurred. During a time when I was supposed to be away, the in-laws visited unexpectedly, expressing surprise at their unusual timing. I sarcastically commented on their avoidance of my presence. Ignoring my remark, they boldly entered the house. James welcomed them with a smile, leading them to inspect various areas, from the kitchen to the bathroom. Observing their meticulous checks, I sensed a hidden agenda behind their actions. Even as they left, they wore satisfied expressions, as if they had confirmed something. Curious and wary, I questioned their inspections and wondered if there was something they should tell me. I had cautioned James not to worry, emphasizing that it was none of his business. His behavior, however, hinted at concealing something from me. I suspected he was trying to manipulate me cunningly, but grasping the real intention proved challenging. Observing the situation became my only option. Then, one day after work, I returned home to find a large moving truck parked in front of our house, bearing the logo of a company named Moving Center. James appeared to be in discussions with the truck driver and representatives. When our eyes met, he pretended not to see me and disappeared inside the house. What shocked me more was the simultaneous arrival of my in-laws. They greeted me casually, and James welcomed them, leading them into the house. The atmosphere felt tense, and as I followed them inside, I noticed a significant change. The familiar furniture and belongings I knew had vanished, replaced by my in-laws' dated furniture, arranged as if this were their home. As I sat down on the sofa, they surrounded me with smirky smiles, conveying a sense of smugness. Their behavior indicated a pre-planned action, and though anxious, I decided to quietly wait and see what would unfold. The somewhat hurried gazes of my in-laws added to the atmosphere. They declared that there was something they needed to tell me, hinting at a hidden agenda. Bracing myself, I responded with feigned calmness, and James sighed deeply before admitting that he had sold the house to his parents. He proposed getting a divorce, and my in-laws nodded in agreement. Their smirky smiles suggested they were trying to toy with me. Despite the revelation, I remained unfazed, having anticipated their plan. I promptly signed the divorce papers, placed my wedding ring on the table, and declared my intention to leave the house. I had suspicions about the unnatural behaviors of James and my in-laws, especially since their frequent visits when I wasn't home. To confirm my suspicions, I installed surveillance cameras around the house, synced with my smartphone. On the first day, I observed their daily conversations. However, one day, I stumbled upon footage where James and his parents joyfully discussed selling the house. Shocked by this revelation, I decided to plan my next steps, searching for a new residence based on the information obtained from the surveillance cameras. I took the initiative to transfer the home loan from my name to James's. If they planned to remove me from our home, I believed they should take over the mortgage payments and responsibilities. The monthly mortgage, amounting to $1,900, was paid from my hard-earned salary. Doubting that James and his parents could afford this, I resolved not to provide any financial assistance. Free from the troublesome relationship, I moved to my new, well-arranged home with new furniture, ready to embark on a new chapter in my life. On my day off, I relished the prospect of thorough rest, sleeping in past noon. As I was about to doze off again, the doorbell abruptly rang. To my surprise, James and his in-laws stood at my doorstep, uninvited. I questioned their presence, and without answering, they intruded into my house, spreading out a document in front of me. They accused me of changing the name on the house loan without permission. Expressing disbelief at their sudden appearance, I learned that right after leaving the house, they received documents about the loan name change. James and his parents were shocked, claiming they were currently unemployed and couldn't afford the high monthly loan. In a furious outburst, James declared they wouldn't pay that amount. Attempting to enlighten them on the consequences of defaulting, I explained how interest and late fees could significantly increase the final payment. James initially seemed skeptical, but after searching for information online, his expression turned to one of shock and distress. I recommended looking for new employment for a fresh start. Their faces grew even paler as they realized the seriousness of the situation. They admitted to having no savings or assets, with James burdened by substantial gambling debts and no stable income. Frustrated, they pleaded for understanding and assistance, emphasizing the years they spent together. Unmoved by their pleas, I shut the door to escape their attempts to mend the relationship. Frustrated, they reported me to the police, leading to their removal from my property. Eventually, due to financial constraints, they relocated to a more affordable apartment on the outskirts of town. James secured a part-time job, supporting his family with that income. Meanwhile, my life remained unchanged, and I focused on my job. In my free time, I started a blog on handmade crafts, gaining attention and doubling my monthly income. Requests for me to serve as an instructor for workshops and courses increased. I had no thoughts of remarrying and planned to navigate life independently. Discovering an old household account book from the early days of my marriage brought back memories of our financial struggles. With a sense of resolve, I decided to build a new happiness on my own, placing the account book back on the shelf.